Welcome, dear listeners, to the Softly Spoken Science Podcast. I'm your host, the Softly Spoken Science Nerd, bringing you bedtime stories calculated to raise your knowledge level. This podcast is dedicated to the belief that a good, calm science talk will put you right to sleep. If you feel like this might be the case, hit like and subscribe now, and tap the little bell to be notified about the next video. Then make yourself comfortable, and let's drift away. Tonight, we are returning to the Dinosaur Society's Dinosaur Encyclopedia by Don Lessem and Donald Glut. This book was published just after we knew dinosaurs were warm-blooded, just before we knew they had feathers. In this episode, we will review encyclopedia entries from Deinonychus through Gasosaurus, discussing dinosaur evolution, as well as updating you with more science since 1993 when our subject was published. Deinonychus antirrhopus. Deinonychus is a remarkable and important dinosaur named for the enormous killer claw on its foot. Deinonychus was a relatively small meat-eater, perhaps weighing less than 200 pounds. It had big eyes, a long snout, and sharp serrated teeth. Its forelimbs were long, ending in long slender hands that had 3 very long fingers equipped with sharp claws. Its tail was constructed of long vertebrae and strengthened to the point of stiffness by numerous bony rods. Its feet had 4 sizable toes and an almost non-existent 5th toe. The most distinctive feature of Deinonychus' foot was the 2nd toe, which had a large curved claw. This claw was extremely long, as much as 13 centimeters, and had a sharply curved sickle shape. Because of this design, Deinonychus probably walked on its 3rd and 4th toes. The 2nd toe, designed for extreme retraction, was carried off the ground and used in attacking prey rather than in walking. Deinonychus' teeth were mostly backward directed instead of downward. The tail was capable of some movement, either from side to side or up and down, but was otherwise inflexible. Its rigidity may have stabilized the animal while it ran. The hands had a remarkable degree of mobility and could flex and turn towards each other. The claws were perfectly designed for seizing prey. Altogether, these adaptations created a carnivorous dinosaur that was capable of pursuing its prey at high speeds. The discovery of Deinonychus in 1964 drastically altered our conception of dinosaurs. Dinosaurs had been regarded as stupid, slow, sluggish, cold-blooded reptiles. But dinosaurs like Deinonychus were designed for living active lives. Deinonychus offers strong evidence supporting the theory that birds descended from a line of theropods. Since 1993, we've learned a lot more about Deinonychus. For one thing, it was feathered head to tail. For another, the shape of the head shown here is wrong. These reconstructions are very good for Velociraptor, but Deinonychus was actually shaped more like the raptors from Jurassic Park. When I was a creationist, I thought these two animals were certainly the same. This was in deep ignorance of the true diversity of Deinonychus and its relatives. Dicraeosaurus hansemanni. This medium-sized, 4-legged browsing dinosaur is identified by its rather short neck. The vertebrae of Dicraeosaurus' neck, back, and hip area had tall spines. This would have given these areas of the body a kind of humpbacked appearance, perhaps to make the animal seem taller and less vulnerable. The front legs were relatively short, measuring about 3/5 the length of the hind legs. The skull of Dicraeosaurus resembled that of the diplodocid sauropods, Diplodocus and Apatosaurus. It was long and narrow, with nostrils on top of the head and pencil-like teeth. The short forelimbs and high spines of the vertebrae over the hips are other indications that this dinosaur was a diplodocid. When I was a creationist, I had no idea what to do with Dicraeosaurus and its relative Amargasaurus. I was under obligation to lump all dinosaurs, especially the biggest ones, into as few fundamental kinds as possible in order to fit 2 of each on Noah's Ark together. Obviously, Dicraeosaurus was related to Diplodocus, and obviously the distance between them was more than 1,000 years. Dilophosaurus wetherilli. This early and unusual carnivorous dinosaur was distinguished by a pair of highly arched crests adorning the top of its head. Also, its forelimbs were longer than those in later large carnivores. Dilophosaurus' head, though large in relation to its body size, was delicately constructed. Some of the skull bones seemed to have been weak, and the teeth were long and slender. Because of the shape of its skull and form of its teeth, some paleontologists suggest that Dilophosaurus lacked a powerful bite and was more of a scavenger than a hunter. Other scientists speculate that Dilophosaurus, like many other carnivorous dinosaurs, was an active predator. Dilophosaurus, owing to its diminutive portrayal in Jurassic Park, is perhaps the most underrated predator of the Jurassic. It was actually, in its time, one of the biggest carnivores that had ever walked the earth, although much smaller than many carnivores that would come later. When I was a creationist, I thought all dinosaurs lived at the same time. That is, I thought Dilophosaurus lived at the same time as Coelophysis, Allosaurus, and Tyrannosaurus. Now, Dilophosaurus would have been an unstoppable hunter of anything human-sized or smaller, but no match for a garden-variety Megaraptor, Allosaur, Tyrannosaur, or Abylosaur, and even some Dromaeosaurs would have outmatched them. Judging by their brain cases, those later dinosaurs were all smarter than Dilophosaurus. They were stronger, better equipped, and some, particularly some juvenile tyrannosaurs, may have been faster. Dilophosaurus was not adapted to compete with other apex predators, even those its own size. Allosaurus, Carnotaurus, and Megaraptor would have wiped it out long before Noah's flood, if the Tyrannosaurs didn't do it first. Diplodocus longus. One of the largest of all dinosaurs, Diplodocus typifies the sauropod family Diplodocids, long and rather graceful four-legged plant eaters that flourished in the middle of dinosaur time. Diplodocus had an elongated snout, with the nostrils on top of the head and teeth only at the front of the mouth. Those teeth were peg-like and particularly weak. The spines of the animal's vertebrae were divided before the hips, probably for housing a long ligament that worked the neck. The neck and tail of Diplodocus were both extremely long, comprising nearly half of the animal's entire length. Its limbs were very slender, and its hind legs were longer than the front legs, which caused the animal to slope downward toward the front. The toes of its front legs were short and slender. Except for the weak front teeth, Diplodocus' jaws were toothless. Some paleontologists believe the weakness and position of these teeth are indications of a diet limited to soft and succulent plants which could be detached from the floors of lakes and rivers and along shorelines. But these teeth are worn flat at right angles to their length, so such abrasions cannot be attributed to soft vegetation. More recent studies have shown that Diplodocus' teeth were like the cropping teeth of cows and horses, suitable for nipping off a wide variety of plants that could later be broken down by chemicals, bacteria, or gizzard stones called gastroliths. Other studies have shown that peg-like teeth were well suited for eating plants with lesser amounts of grit. In other words, the kinds of plants growing at higher levels. If Diplodocus could rear up on its hind legs, as some paleontologists have suggested, its long giraffe-like neck could have brought its head to a higher feeding level. We can imagine Diplodocus probing among the branches of tall trees, nibbling such foods as conifer needles. Various kinds of giant plant eaters are found in rocks of the same age and location in the American West. How did these big, hungry animals manage to share the plant resources? Because Diplodocus' body was directed downward toward the front, it may have had access to both low and high-growing plants, the kinds of plants usually avoided by its horizontally directed contemporary, Camarasaurus. The type species of Diplodocus was founded upon some vertebrae discovered in 1877 by Samuel Wendell Williston in Fremont County, Colorado. But much of what we know of this genus has resulted from the discovery of the better-known species Diplodocus carnegie, which is based on some good skeletons collected by O.A. Peterson for the Carnegie Museum of Natural History in 1900. Casts of Diplodocus carnegie skeletons were sent to museums all over the world. Dracopelta zbyszewskii. Dracopelta is significant as the first ankylosaur, or armored dinosaur, found from the late Jurassic period. Armored dinosaurs previously were known only from the Cretaceous. If we imagine a generic nodosaurid, one of the more primitive ankylosaurs, and project those features upon the known armor of Dracopelta, we may have some idea how this dinosaur looked in life: squat, wide, and heavily armored. There were at least 5 distinct types of armor on the chest of this dinosaur, ranging from very small, isolated, flat armor plates to circular, longer plates. The plates ranged in size from 31 mm by 21 to 190 mm by 110. Dromaeosaurus albertensis. Dromaeosaurus was a fleet-footed carnivorous dinosaur. Like other members of the Dromaeosaur family, this dinosaur had a large head with well-developed, sharply pointed serrated teeth. The top of the Dromaeosaurus skull had the same general proportions as the skulls of larger meat-eaters. The brain cavity was relatively large. The jaws were long, but not massive. The skull measured about 21 centimeters long. One of the most striking features of Dromaeosaurus was its foot, one toe of which was longer than the others, 8 centimeters, and bore an oversized claw. This claw was probably used as a weapon. The head was quite bird-like in its construction, and its large brain was more like that of a bird than a reptile. The skull also had bird features, and was similar to the late Jurassic bird Archaeopteryx. These bird-like features show the close relationship of many later dinosaur carnivores to modern birds. With its large brain, big eyes, grasping hands, and specialized toes, Dromaeosaurus was probably an intelligent, swift-moving, and skillful hunter. When I was a creationist in the 1990s, I thought all Dromaeosaurs had to be the same. Everyone was a lot more ignorant about Dromaeosaurs back then. We had no idea that some Dromaeosaurs were adapted like ducks. They floated on the water, dove, and swam with their wings. Some were like flying squirrels. They climbed trees, jumped, and glided. Some were brawlers. The very fact that Dromaeosaur family relationships can be traced through time over millions of years makes an absolute mockery of young Earth creationism. Dromiceiomimus brevitertius. This large ornithomimid may have been the fastest of all dinosaurs. Its lightly built body and powerful hind limbs indicate that Dromiceiomimus may have attained a running speed surpassing that of an ostrich, but it had less dodging capability. With no adaptations for defense, this dinosaur must have relied on speed to escape large predators like Dromaeosaurs or juvenile Tyrannosaurs. Its large eyes, which may have been color sensitive, would have helped alert Dromiceiomimus to danger. Its skull had a remarkably large eye hole, the rim of which was some 72 millimeters in diameter. The Dromiceiomimus brain was relatively large, comparable in size to that of an ostrich. Its limbs were long, and the hand was not as powerfully developed as that in Struthiomimus, another ornithomimid. The shape of the muzzle, which in life was covered by a horny beak, and other details of the skull, indicate that this dinosaur ate insects. The weak jaw muscles suggest that Dromiceiomimus and other ornithomimids may also have eaten soft foods, like eggs and soft animal parts. The hands, more suited to uncovering foods than grasping prey, could have lifted from the ground. We know that many dinosaurs laid eggs, but we have no evidence of live births among them. However, some researchers have speculated that ornithomimids, especially Dromiceiomimus, gave birth to live young. Their pelvic canals are very wide for their small body size. Remains of both adult and half-grown Dromiceiomimus at one site suggested that these animals maintained a social structure and that the young relied on parental care. Dryosaurus altus. Dryosaurus was a slender, primitive, two-footed dinosaur. The forelimbs were long, and the upper leg bone was shorter than the lower, an anatomical feature of swift runners. The toes were long and hollow, another feature of fast-running animals. We can tell more about Dryosaurus' appearance from the bones of its head. Its skull was slim, ending in a horny beak. Its eye holes were large. Dryosaurus' cheek teeth were elongated, with coarse cutting edges and vertical ridges adapted for chewing tough vegetation. The presence of Dryosaurus, as well as other late Jurassic dinosaurs, in both North America and East Africa at about the same time, supports the theory that a land route existed during the late Jurassic period between Laurasia and Gondwana, the northern and southern supercontinents. Dryptosaurus aquilunguis. Dryptosaurus is celebrated as the first meat-eating dinosaur described from North America. Dryptosaurus had the same general body proportions as other large carnivorous dinosaurs. Its most distinctive feature was a very large claw, like an eagle's, on its first finger. This claw was originally thought to belong on the animal's toe. It measured at least 21 centimeters in length, about 75% of the length of the animal's upper arm bone, and would have been even longer in life because of its horny sheath. Some paleontologists have suggested that this claw may have been used as a tool to cut the blood vessels of prey, or to pry off the armor plates of ankylosaurs. Originally named Laelaps in 1866, a name that proved to have been taken, Dryptosaurus was then perceived to be the most formidable predator of all time and the natural hunter of the duck-billed dinosaur Hadrosaurus. It was depicted pouncing onto its prey with huge kangaroo-like leaps and then ripping into the flesh with its great claws. When I was a creationist, I believed the answers were in Genesis to all questions in earth science. I believed, according to Genesis, that there had been only 2 tyrannosaurs on Noah's Ark, and therefore all tyrannosaurs were basically the same. This was largely in ignorance of tyrannosaur evolution. Dyslocosaurus polyonichius. Dyslocosaurus was an unusual small member of the diplodocid family. All diplodocids had tapering tails ending in a whiplash. Dyslocosaurus was distinguished by its particularly big feet. The toes of its hind feet had a greater circumference relative to length than those in any other known diplodocid. The presence of 4 definite claws made Dyslocosaurus unique among diplodocids. Dyslocosaurus is an important dinosaur find, perhaps representing either the last survivor of an otherwise unknown line of North American diplodocids, or an immigrant evolved from diplodocids from another continent. Dyslocosaurus may be a species derived from late Cretaceous diplodocids such as the Asian Nemegtosaurus. Another possibility is that, like other North American sauropods, it comes from late Jurassic sediments improperly dated. Echinodon becklesii. Echinodon may have been related to Scutellosaurus, a plant eater with small bony armor panels on its back. This little-known dinosaur, found in a bay in Dorset, England, was described in 1861 by Sir Richard Owen. Basing his description on parts of the jaw, Owen concluded that Echinodon was the most advanced of the small early ornithopod plant eaters, the Fabersaurs. The Fabersaurid family name has now been abandoned. Armor found by Owen in England in 1879 and thought to belong to a lizard may actually belong to Echinodon. Edmontonia longiceps. This squat, heavily armored plant eater grew nearly as large as a tank. Like other nodosaurids, and unlike their close relatives, the ankylosaurs, Edmontonia had no tail club. It had a wide, flat head, at least 3/5 as wide as it was long. Edmontonia was described in 1928 by the famed dinosaur hunter Charles M. Sternberg. Sternberg described Edmontonia from an excellent skeleton found in what was then called the Edmonton Formation on the Red Deer River in Alberta, Canada. Edmontosaurus regalis. Edmontosaurus is the classic duck-billed dinosaur. It is one of the best understood of all dinosaurs, thanks to the discovery of numerous excellent skeletons. Like most hadrosaurs of this age, Edmontosaurus had no crest, and like all other hadrosaurs, it had hundreds of strong teeth that were connected by bony tissue. These batteries formed long grinding surfaces for crushing tough vegetation. 2 mummified specimens of Edmontosaurus discovered in Wyoming provide a clear picture of both the diet and the appearance of Edmontosaurus. Its hide was remarkably thin and leathery, and studded with horny bumps, or tubercules, of varying sizes. The tubercules were clustered on the throat, neck, and sides were round or oval and arranged in definite patterns. Fines show a frill down the spine and along the back and tail, a feature that may have been present in all hadrosaurs. For many years, Edmontosaurus was thought to have webbed fingers, a belief based on a mitten-like covering enclosing the hand of the Wyoming mummy. Some paleontologists think the webbed effect occurred during fossilization. Tracks of duckbill feet indicate they were mitten-like in life. The mistaken interpretation of webbed fingers contributes to a long-standing misconception of duckbills as aquatic animals. In fact, Edmontosaurus walked on land, supported by bony tendons in its backbone and thick pillar-like legs. Its foot, which had 3 broad splayed toes, was designed for balance and grip. Powerful ankles supported the animal while it walked. Edmontosaurus, like other duckbills, varied considerably with age. Elaphrosaurus bambergi. Elaphrosaurus may have been the earliest member of a family that includes the fastest of all dinosaurs. Well, since 1993 we've learned that Elaphrosaurus was a ceratosaur. Its tail appears to have featured an unusual downward bend. Compared to other carnivorous dinosaurs, Elaphrosaurus had short forelimbs and long leg and foot bones. Its hands and feet each bore 3 digits. Well, when I was a creationist, I certainly thought this was the same animal as Dilophosaurus. Elmisaurus rarus. This is a rare animal, as its species name suggests. It was named on the basis of its distinctive foot found in the Gobi Desert of Mongolia in 1970. The bones of the third and fourth toes were completely fused to each other and to the metatarsals. This tarsometatarsus is a bird-like characteristic. The hand of Elmisaurus has an upper bone on its first finger that is more than half the length of its second finger. The proportions of its hands indicate a resemblance to Denotes, a dinosaur from the Red Deer River of Alberta, known only from fragments of its sharp-clawed hands. The foot of Elmisaurus is most like that of Macrophalangia, another mysterious animal from the Red Deer River. Like Macrophalangia, the slender Elmisaurus foot resembles an Ornithomimosaur's foot, but has 4 toes instead of the 3 typical of Ornithomimosaurs. Emausaurus ernsti. This small dinosaur, identified in 1990, was a primitive example of the early mostly 4-legged armored plant eaters. It was named on the basis of an almost complete skull and some associated body bones found in northern Germany. Emausaurus is distinguished by its relatively small, cone and plate-shaped armor, a broad skull with 5 teeth on each side of the front of the jaw, and narrow snout. Emausaurus, Scutellosaurus, and Scelidosaurus are all closely related to each other and to the as yet unknown ancestor of the Stegosaurs and Ankylosaurs. Therizinosaurs are peculiar animals, and the justly named Enigmasaurus is no exception. They measured some 20 feet long and had small heads and odd jaws. The jaws had no teeth in the front and short, pointed teeth in the back. Perhaps they had a horny beak. Their wide feet and thick legs suggest they were slow-moving, and led some paleontologists to surmise that they ate fish or plants, although they otherwise appear to have been carnivorous dinosaurs. Enigmasaurus was described on the basis of its pelvis, which is one of the most unusual features of Segnosaurs. Eoraptor lunensis. This small predator, named in 1993, may be the most primitive dinosaur yet known. The well-preserved skeleton of Eoraptor, lacking only some tail vertebrae, was discovered in 1991 by an American-Argentine expedition to northwestern Argentina. This region is the most productive in the world for finding dinosaurs from the earliest known time of dinosaur life, including the larger Herrerasaurus. Eoraptor probably ran on 2 legs, as its forelimbs are less than half the length of its hind limbs. Several features of Eoraptor reveal its primitive status, including the absence of a hinged lower middle jaw, a feature of other meat-eating dinosaurs. The skull of Eoraptor also features a mix of teeth, unique for a dinosaur. While its rear upper teeth are serrated and curved like those of other meat-eating dinosaurs, its front upper teeth are leaf-shaped, more like those of the plant-eating saurischian dinosaurs. The skeleton of Eoraptor has several primitive characteristics, including just 3 vertebrae supporting its pelvis, the lowest number in any known dinosaur. It also shows the earliest stages of the reduction of fingers in the carnivorous dinosaur's hand, a trend which culminated in the 2-fingered hand of Tyrannosaurus rex some 163 million years later. On Eoraptor, the hand has 5 fingers, but the 5th digit is greatly reduced in size. The existence of such a primitive dinosaur as Eoraptor at the same time and place as ornithischian dinosaurs such as Pisanosaurus and more advanced meat-eaters such as Herrerasaurus suggests to scientists dinosaurs diversified rapidly from a small-sized common ancestor approximately 230 million years ago. Euhelopus zbyszewskii. Euhelopus was an extremely long-necked sauropod. Its neck may have been 5 meters in length. On the other end of its bulky torso was a long tail. Euhelopus had spoon-shaped teeth and a small skull like Camarasaurus, another sauropod, but Euhelopus' skull was more delicately proportioned. Its front legs were almost exactly as long as its hind legs, giving it longer forelimbs in comparison to its hind limbs than any other sauropod except Brachiosaurus. In size and other respects, Euhelopus more nearly resembled Omaisaurus, a Chinese sauropod of the Cetiosaur family. Euoplocephalus tutus. Euoplocephalus is the best known of all the armored dinosaurs. The extensive fossil finds of this dinosaur reveal an animal armored from head to tail. Its entire back and sides were covered with bony plates. These plates were smaller at the midsection and back of the animal, and larger on its front and on the sides. Most plates were 5 or 6-sided, their surfaces marked by raised and irregular crisscrossings. Euoplocephalus also provided the first evidence of the ankylosaur's distinctive clubbed tails. Euoplocephalus' tail was comprised of 10 fused vertebrae, which were strengthened on both sides by additional prongs of bone. The tail club was made of 4 fused bony growths. Euoplocephalus was built low to the ground like a tank with massive short leg bones. From various specimens referred to Euoplocephalus, Denver Museum of Natural History researcher Kenneth Carpenter prepared the first accurate composite skeletal reconstruction and life restoration ever done for any ankylosaur. Carpenter restored Euoplocephalus with its limbs in an upright posture, not splayed out as in earlier depictions, and its tail off the ground. Bands of large, variously shaped plates ran across the body in the back and tail regions. 2 bands of armor plates crossed the neck, the first consisting of large, slightly ridged plates, the second of large, blunt spikes. 4 bands studded with rows of large, low-keeled plates adorned Euoplocephalus' back. Its hips were protected by bands covered with disc-shaped studs. Plates of various sizes were probably present on the forelimbs, shoulders, and thighs. Eustreptospondylus oxoniensis. Remains of this dinosaur were among the first to be named in 1841 by Sir Richard Owen, the year before he published the term dinosaur for the first time. It resembles the first dinosaur named Megalosaurus bucklandi, though it is slightly smaller and more slender. Eustreptospondylus was related to the later Jurassic carnivore Allosaurus, but just where Eustreptospondylus fits into the ancestry of carnosaurs is still unknown. The skeleton of this animal at the University Museum in Oxford shows an apparently immature animal, lightly built and less than 6 meters long. Eustreptospondylus may have grown as much as 7 meters. Gallimimus bellatus. The largest of the swift long-legged ostrich dinosaurs, the ornithomimids, Gallimimus is the only one for which a good skull has been found, so it provides the best insight into the appearance of these distinctive dinosaurs. It had a very long snout, which was shaped like a goose's bill, flattened at the tip from top to bottom. The front part of the lower jaw was shovel-like. Its eyes were positioned on the sides of its head, so it may not have had good depth perception. Gallimimus had a long mobile neck. Its upper arms were relatively weak. Its fingers had little strength for grasping, suggesting that they may have been used for raking the ground, searching for small live prey, such as mammals and insects. Though Gallimimus was the largest of ornithomimids, its hand was the smallest, measuring only 1/4 the length of its forelimb. With its long legs and light body, Gallimimus was probably one of the fastest of all dinosaurs. Ornithomimid-like tracks from Texas suggest this family of dinosaurs was capable of speeds in excess of 25 miles per hour. Gallimimus was discovered in the Gobi Desert in the early 1970s. Garudimimus brevipes. Garudimimus was a large primitive ostrich dinosaur. It had shorter toes than other ornithomimids, and 4 toes instead of the usual 3. It also had unusual, backward-pointing horns above its eyes. Found in southeastern Mongolia and named in 1981, it comes from sediments several million years older than that of Gallimimus and other better-known ostrich dinosaurs from Mongolia and western North America. Gasosaurus constructus. Gasosaurus was found in the early 1980s in one of the world's great dinosaur graveyards, the Dashenpu Quarry in Sichuan, central China. Though many dinosaurs were found there intact and with skulls, Gasosaurus is known only from an incomplete skeleton. Gasosaurus may belong to the carnosaurs, a group of large carnivores that includes a variety of animals. If it was a carnosaur, Gasosaurus was one of the smallest. Gasosaurus constructus was named by Chinese dinosaur paleontologist Dong Jiming for the natural gas facility whose construction workers discovered the Dashenpu dinosaurs. For Gasosaurus, they have used an illustration of a Tarbosaurus. This is questionable. Well, that takes us all the way from Deinonychus through Gasosaurus. Next time we will review from Geniodectes through Kentrosaurus. For now, I hope you've enjoyed the Softly Spoken Science podcast. Good night.